The next time you walk into a massive big box store, like picture a Walmart or a Target or Best Buy, I really want you to just stop for a second and look down one of those main aisles.
Oh, yeah. Just take it all in.
Right. Because from a consumer perspective, it's just this perfectly serene, well-curated museum of commerce. I mean, the lighting is bright, everything is perfectly categorized, and the boxes are aligned right on the edge of the shelf.
It looks so effortless.
It does. But beneath that polished surface, what you are actually looking at is, well, the result of a really intense, highly calculated competition.
It really is a feat of engineering and, ruthless negotiation. Because the sheer volume of strategy and logistics and honestly rejection that it takes to get just one of those cardboard boxes onto that specific metal shelf is something most shoppers just never have to think about.
Which is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are basically handing you the ultimate playbook for getting a product onto the shelves of those massive retailers.
And we have some really incredible source material for this.
Yeah, we're pulling insights today from a very comprehensive guide produced by Retailbound. It was authored by their president, Johann Jacob. And what makes this so interesting is that Jacob actually used to be a retail buyer himself.
Right, so we are getting the view from the other side of the desk here. We get to look at this whole terrifying process through the eyes of the gatekeeper who actually makes the decisions.
Exactly. So whether you are, an entrepreneur sitting at your kitchen table, tinkering with a prototype you think is the next big thing, or you are just insanely curious about the hidden mechanics of the retail world, this deep dive is going to reveal the secret sauce.
Because the stakes are incredibly high.
Oh, massive. Every single year, thousands of brands try to land this coveted shelf space, but only a tiny, tiny fraction actually pull it off.
And to understand the mechanics of the few who actually succeed, we have to look very closely at the vast majority who fail. I mean, we really need to dissect the anatomy of a rejection.
Okay, let's unpack this, because long before a brand ever gets a yes, they are going to face a massive wall of no.
A very tall wall.
Right. And Johann Jacob points out a few very common reasons buyers just flat out pass on a product. He highlights a lack of proven sales history, weak sales presentations that basically just waste the buyer's time, poor packaging, and incorrect pricing strategies.
It's a brutal list.
It is. Looking at this, pitching a massive retailer feels a lot like applying for a really high-level job. I mean, you can't just walk into the room armed with a cool idea and a lot of passion. You need a resume.
Yeah, because passion simply does not mitigate risk. And in the retail world, a proven sales history functions as your resume. Buyers are fundamentally, almost pathologically, risk-averse.
Right.
They do not want to take a gamble on an untested product.
Because in a buyer's mind, unproven basically just means unsafe. But I want to dig into why they are so risk-averse. They are massive corporations, right? Shouldn't they be the ones taking huge swings on new trends?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to understand the core economics of a retail buyer's job. Their entire world revolves around real estate. Yeah, inside a physical store, shelf space is entirely finite. And it is highly, highly valuable. Think about the overhead you've got: lighting, heating, staffing, and maintaining hundreds of thousands of square feet.
Oh, wow, right.
So every single square inch of a shelf must generate a specific, totally predictable metric of revenue just to justify its own existence.
Which means if a buyer decides to put your new product on their shelf, they literally have to evict another product to make room for you.
Exactly. They're kicking out a product that already has a proven track record of generating steady income.
That's a huge gamble.
It is. So if you walk in with an untested gadget, the buyer isn't just seeing a fun new idea. They are calculating a potential financial liability.
Because if it fails, it's on them.
Right. If your product sits on the shelf and just gathers dust, that buyer's metrics drop. Their department loses money, and honestly, their own job performance is called into question. So the default answer is no, simply because maintaining the status quo is a lot safer than taking a bet on a rookie.
So the burden of proof is entirely on the brand. You have to show you can turn a profit faster and more reliably than whatever is currently sitting in that spot.
Precisely.
Which naturally brings up this concept of being retail ready. Because since rejection stems from this perception of risk, a brand has to build a huge foundation of readiness long before they ever even ask for a meeting.
And being retail ready, it's highly technical. Jacob's guide is very clear that these big chains have uncompromising standards.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be in strict compliance with industry regulations.
We're talking about things like UL testing for electronics or really strict FDA compliance for anything ingestible, right?
Exactly. But it goes even deeper into labeling laws, having the precise, legally required safety warnings, and listing ingredients in very specific formats.
You can't just wing it.
No, you absolutely cannot just print a nice label at home and stick it on a bottle, because if a massive chain gets audited and your product is out of compliance, it's a massive disaster for them.
Then there is the financial side of being retail ready, which is the pricing strategy. The playbook notes that large retailers demand highly competitive wholesale costs, mainly because they offer you massive volume in return.
Yeah, you really have to understand the math of retail margins before you walk in the door. So say your retailer might want to sell your product for $50, right?
Okay, 50 bucks.
But they expect a 50% margin. That means they will only pay you $25 for it.
Wow, half.
Right. And if your manufacturing, shipping, and overhead cost you $22 a unit, you're only making $3 a sale. You have to know if your business can actually survive on those specific wholesale margins, or you will literally price yourself right out of consideration.
But the piece of this preparation puzzle that I actually found most interesting in Jacob's guide was his focus on the physical box.
The packaging.
Yeah, he calls your packaging your silent salesperson. And I kind of have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If an entrepreneur invents a truly groundbreaking product, let's say it's a revolutionary new kitchen gadget that saves people hours of time, shouldn't the innovation just speak for itself? Like, why is the cardboard box it comes in considered this make or break factor?
It is such a common trap for brilliant inventors to fall into. I mean, they think the engineering is the star of the show.
Right, because it's a great invention.
Sure, but in a 100,000 square foot store, there is no one standing in the aisle to demonstrate your genius engineering. There is no infomercial playing to explain how it saves time. You just have the box.
That makes sense.
And on a crowded shelf, surrounded by brightly colored competitors, your product has roughly a 3-second window to grab a passing consumer's attention.
3 seconds. So the box has to instantly communicate what the thing does, why it matters, and who it's for, all without making a sound.
Yes. And it's not just the everyday consumer who is judging it either. The retail buyer is evaluating your packaging during the pitch.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Because they manage thousands of squeeze stock keeping units, which are essentially the unique barcodes for every individual variation of a product in their inventory. When they look at your box, they're asking themselves, is this going to confuse my customer, or is it going to sell itself?
So they're judging a book by its cover.
Absolutely. If the packaging looks amateurish, the buyer assumes your supply chain and your entire company are amateurish, regardless of how great the actual gadget inside might be.
Let's move into the pitch itself then. Say a brand has navigated the regulations, the margins make sense, and they have this beautiful, communicative, silent salesperson ready to go. The product is officially retail ready.
The fun part begins.
Right. Now the game completely changes from product development to communication and strategy. Like, how do you actually get a buyer's attention and convince them to take a chance on you?
Well, this is where the hustle really shifts gears. You don't just find a generic email address for a Home Depot buyer and send a cold pitch. Jacob emphasizes that approaching these gatekeepers requires highly strategic networking.
Yeah, he recommends hitting the pavement at industry trade shows, mostly because a lot of these relationships are still actually forged face-to-face.
And you have to leverage your existing network. Like, if you use a specific manufacturer or a distributor who already supplies products to Target, you use them for a warm introduction.
That's smart.
It is. A buyer is far, far more likely to take a meeting if an established partner vouches for you.
And when you do finally secure that meeting, Jacob is adamant that your pitch has to be surgically precise. You need a 30-second elevator pitch defining your unique selling proposition.
Your USP.
Right. And you have to bring hard data, sales figures, demographic market research, testimonials, just to prove the demand actually exists. But here's where it gets really interesting. Jacob points out that your pitch cannot be a one-size-fits-all script. You have to customize the story for every single retailer.
Because every retailer has a totally different core customer and a different strategic goal.
Think about a company pitching a new heavy-duty smart lock for a front door. Right. If you pitch that to Home Depot, you are talking to a buyer who cares about contractors, durability, weather resistance.
Exactly.
But if you take that exact same smart lock and pitch it to Best Buy, Their buyer cares about how it integrates with Wi-Fi, the tech-savvy early adopters, and like the companion smartphone app. You
Huh.
really have to speak their specific dialect.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You are trying to show the buyer how your product solves a specific gap in their unique assortment.
Right.
And to do that, the playbook dictates bringing a professional product deck. And this isn't just a basic slideshow of pretty product photos.
What else is in it?
This deck has to anticipate the buyer's operational anxieties. You need to outline your inventory capacity,
Yeah.
how you plan to handle their fulfillment requirements, and crucially, what kind of marketing dollars you were spending to drive traffic into their specific stores to buy your product.
Wow. So, okay, you do all that, you bring the data, you speak their language, the buyer absolutely loves the silent salesperson, and they look at you and say, yes, we want your product in 1,000 stores.
A dream come true.
It has to feel like the ultimate finish line for a small business.
Yeah.
But diving into the operational demands that Jacob outlines, it really seems like getting a yes is actually just a starting gun for a whole new level of stress.
Oh, absolutely. Hooking your business to a massive retail machine means you have to operate at their speed. And I assure you, they do not slow down to let you catch your breath.
The expectations are staggering. We are talking about mandatory on-time deliveries, 100% accurate orders, strict return policies, and these massive compliance manuals. Let's look at the financial penalties for a second.
The dreaded chargebacks.
Yeah, Jacob mentions things like chargebacks. Could getting a yes from a giant like Walmart actually bankrupt a small company if their logistics aren't dialed in?
This raises an important question, and honestly, it is a very harsh reality many new vendors face. Let's explore the actual mechanics of a chargeback to see how that happens.
Let's hear it.
Large retailers use what are called vendor routing guides. These are essentially massive, highly detailed rulebooks dictating exactly how your product must arrive at their distribution center.
Like down to the inch.
Oh, yes. It dictates the type of pallet you use, how high the boxes can be stacked, and exactly which corner of the box the shipping barcode needs to be on.
Wait, so what happens if my warehouse team makes a mistake and, I don't know, puts the barcode on the top of the box instead of the side?
Well, then the retailer's automated conveyor belt scanners won't be able to read it. That means the retailer has to physically pull your pallet off the line and pay one of their own employees to manually scan and relabel your boxes.
And they aren't going to pay for that.
Exactly. They are not going to absorb that cost. They issue a chargeback, which means they simply deduct the cost of that manual labor along with a penalty fee, usually directly from the invoice they owe you.
So my payout shrinks before the product even hits the store floor.
Yes. And chargebacks apply to timing, too. If you are scheduled to deliver at a distribution center at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday and your truck arrives on Wednesday morning, you are hit with a late penalty.
Wow.
Combine a few of these logistical errors with the already thin wholesale margins we talked about earlier, and a brand can very quickly find themselves actually losing money on a massive purchase order.
And then there is the cash flow mechanism itself. I mean, if I get an order for $1 million worth of inventory, I have to pay my factory to manufacture it. I have to pay the freight forwarder to ship it. So I am already deeply, deeply out of pocket.
And you won't see a single dime from the retailer for quite a while. Most massive retailers operate on net 60 or net 90 payment terms.
Meaning they don't pay me until 90 days after the product actually arrives at their warehouse.
Correct. So you have to bridge that massive cash flow gap. You are paying your employees, your marketing, your rent for 3 to 4 months while just waiting for that invoice to clear.
That's terrifying.
If a brand hasn't secured the right lines of credit or financing to survive that gap, the sheer scale of a big box order will absolutely crush them.
Which really highlights why Jacob insists brands have things like a fully developed recall plan in place before hitting the shelf.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's not just about protecting the consumer. It's about signaling to this behemoth retailer that you have the operational maturity to handle a crisis without folding.
The retailer needs to trust that you aren't going to just vanish if a batch of product gets damaged or recalled. You have to prove you can protect their brand reputation just as fiercely as your own.
So to survive those operational hurdles and actually secure long-term growth, Jacob shares some very specific insider tips. And the first one circles right back to this idea of operational maturity. You have to be brutally, uncomfortably honest with yourself about your readiness.
Before you even try to get a buyer's email address, you need to stress test your own supply chain. Like if a buyer looks across the table and asks if you can scale production to hit a sudden 50,000 unit holiday order, and you hesitate, they will notice.
You also have to know your true landed cost down to the penny,
Yes.
because it's not just the cost of raw materials. You have to calculate the freight, the packaging, the marketing allowances, the distributor commissions, and, like we said, the potential chargebacks. If you miscalculate that true cost, you will end up negotiating a contract that just bleeds your company dry over the course of a year.
And if you are navigating these waters for the very first time, Jacob's playbook suggests bringing in experienced navigators.
Like who?
Well, he recommends getting your product featured in trade publications because buyers actively read those to scout for emerging trends. But more importantly, he strongly suggests leveraging independent manufacturer reps or specialized distributors.
Because they already have the relationship.
Exactly. These intermediaries already know the buyer's preferences, they deeply understand the routing guides, and they can keep a new brand from stepping on all those operational landmines we just talked about.
But of all the insider advice Jacob provides, there's one core philosophy that just really stands out. He distills it down to a 3-letter acronym, AFT. Always follow through.
Always follow through.
So what does this all mean in the day-to-day grind of retail? Well, it means if you are on a Zoom call with the buyer and you promise to send them a revised pricing spreadsheet by Thursday morning, that spreadsheet better be the very first thing they see in their inbox at 8 a.m. on Thursday.
Right. No excuses.
If you promise to overnight a physical prototype, you leave the meeting and drive directly to the shipping center. It's amazing how something so simple can make or break a $1 million deal.
Well, what's fascinating here is that this advice strips away all the corporate spreadsheets and reminds us of the actual human element at the center of retail.
Yeah.
A retail buyer is a person managing a very high-stress job, constantly putting out logistical fires across hundreds of different brands. The absolute last thing they want is a vendor they have to chase down for an answer.
They just want someone who makes their life easier, not harder.
Exactly. In this cutthroat environment, your reliability as a vendor is often just as valuable as the innovation of your product. A buyer will gladly give shelf space to a steady, predictable partner who keeps every single promise over a brand with a flashy pitch that goats them on follow-up emails.
Makes total sense.
AFT is how you demonstrate that you are a true partner, not just a peddler trying to make a quick sale.
A partner, not a peddler. That distinction really brings our deep dive full circle today, because we started out looking for the secret to conquering big box retail, and the reality is that the secret isn't just having a great idea or a cool invention.
Not at all.
The playbook demands that you are ruthlessly prepared on compliance and pricing before you ever even make contact. You have to know your cash flow and margins well enough to survive the brutal operational demands of net 90 terms and chargebacks. You have to tailor your story so you are solving the buyer's unique problems, and above all, you have to be relentlessly reliable.
Johann Jacob's guide provides a very pragmatic, clear blueprint for getting onto the shelf. We now understand the mechanics of the pitch, the compliance checks, and the brutal logistics of getting the cardboard box into the store.
Right.
But here's something for you to mull over as we wrap up. Once you have survived that entire gauntlet, once you are finally sitting on that prime real estate at Walmart, sandwiched between massive legacy brands with bottomless marketing budgets, how do you ensure the everyday consumer actually reaches out and grabs your silent salesperson instead of the brand they've been habitually buying for the last 10 years?
Now that is the real multi-million-dollar question, something to definitely think about next time you're walking down that aisle. Until next time, keep diving deep.